A Toronto police officer is killed during a raid that was tied to the IRGC backed terror network. A Toronto police officer was killed executing a search warrant, and the thread connecting this shooting runs straight to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Here are the confirmed facts. Constable Pinizzotto, a 43-year-old with 18 years on the job and a member of Toronto's elite emergency task force, was shot and killed at approximately 5:40 a.m. while officers executed a search warrant at an apartment building near Threadway Drive. Now, here's the thing. He was transported to Sunnybrook Hospital where he was pronounced deceased. The Toronto police chief confirmed that the death and stated that he had been a member of the EFT for 5 years. The suspect who pulled the trigger is a 19-year-old Nicholas Bennett of Toronto. He was shot multiple times by a second officer after firing on the original officer. Now, here's where the story separates from a standard officer-involved shooting. The search warrant that brought these officers to the door was part of a multinational operation tied to a March 10, 2026 shooting at the U.S. Consulate in Toronto. That attack was carried out when two male suspects exited a Honda CRV before dawn and fired multiple rounds at the heavily fortified Consulate building on University Avenue. Of course, no one was injured, but the RCMP immediately declared it a national security incident and contacted the police department locally and the FBI. A second suspect in this investigation, the 19-year-old Zara Jabbi, who intentionally fired a handgun at the consulate in March, was also being sought. However, he escaped and they're looking for him at the time of this recording. But the network behind all of this goes much deeper than the two teenagers in Toronto. On May 15, 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice ended up arresting a guy named Mohammad Al-Saadi, a 32-year-old Iraqi national who is described as a senior commander for Kata'ib Hizballah, that is a direct operational arm of the IRGC. The DOJ complaint alleged that Al-Saadi and his associates planned, coordinated, and claimed responsibility for at least 18 terrorist attacks across Europe and 2 additional ones in Canada. And I've done a video on this fellow a couple of times. Now, the 2 Canadian attacks are the March 10 shooting at Toronto U.S. Consulate and a separate attack targeting a Toronto area synagogue. This is the IRGC's operating model. They don't always send uniform operatives. They recruit, radicalize, direct, and pay local actors, sometimes teenager, to carry out attacks on Western soil while the regime maintains plausible deniability behind front group names. When a 19-year-old in Toronto apartment opens fire on an elite police unit executing a lawful warrant, that act does not exist in isolation. It exists in the end of a chain that runs from an apartment in Toronto to a network of attacks across 2 continents and straight back to Tehran. This is why it's important for you to pay attention to who your kids are associating with online when they're chatting and playing games. Groups like 764, the nihilistic violent extremists, and terror groups like IRGC and ISIS also frequent these spaces and are looking for victims to exploit. Let me know what you think should happen to these 2 suspects and the rest of the cohorts that will be captured soon. And as always, stay vigilant. If you see something, say something. Don't forget to like, share, comment, follow, the normal thing you hear in every video. And again, thanks for watching. Have a great day.